Well, good morning. Do we have any visitors this morning? From where? Buffalo, New York. Did it stop snowing? Good. Yesterday. Anywhere else? From where? For where? St. Raphael's. Father Ben. Where from? Detroit, Michigan. I've been waiting all morning for this. St. Scholastica, okay. Anywhere else? Nobody else? I have to tell you that last night at Mass, the altar servers said to me, "Why are you wearing Detroit colors?" And I had to assure them that the Holy Spirit had them long before Detroit. And all I can say is they have to still come here, so it's not over yet. This morning, my friends, we gather to celebrate the Feast of Pentecost, which is depicted in that first window there, the beginning of the church. The keys represent the church, and the tongues of fire, the Spirit that came down upon the church when Jesus transferred the church to us. And he gave us the Holy Spirit, and that Holy Spirit makes all things new and all things different. Now, the question for us is this, that do we fully grasp what went on that day? In Jerusalem that day, the apostles were locked up in prayer, and the Holy Spirit came upon them. Now, the apostles were a bunch of doofuses, as you've heard me say before. They weren't intellectuals. They weren't international scholars. Some of them maybe couldn't even read. But what happened to them under the influence of the Holy Spirit that day was that they began to preach, and not only preach but preach in languages that they did not know. Now, that might seem unusual to you, and that might seem like, are we sure that happened? Well, yes, it's a historic fact. And from what we read in the book of the Acts of the Apostles, people from all over the world were in Jerusalem because of the feast day. And they heard them. And they even mentioned, why are these people from Galilee, Galilee, by the way, was the sticks. Okay? People from Galilee were they were the hillbillies of the day. Okay? And so where did these guys get this from? And Jerusalem was just like any parish today. These guys were preaching their hearts out in languages, and there were people that were standing there going, "Oh yeah," and people were converted. And then there were other people. Some were late, missed it. Some were left early before it was over, missed it. Some were sleeping. Some just went on about their things, just like this group. Okay? And people were just going on about their thing and missed this earth-changing event. These 12 men, the 11 men at that point, changed the history of the world. They changed it. Jesus was not known outside of Galilee. Jesus was in the backwashes of the Roman Empire. Nobody had heard of Jesus. And yet, he's known in every continent and every country in the world today. Because 11 doofuses allowed the Holy Spirit. They got themselves out of the way and let the Holy Spirit work through them. Okay? Now, that's what Pentecost is. Now, Pentecost happens for us every year. And what we need to begin to do is to understand what's going on here. How many of you know what EPA means? How many of you are awake? You know, like when I ask a question, you're supposed to say, you understand? What's EPA mean? Thank you. Someone's away. The Environmental Protection Agency. You pay for that. Okay? Well, I have a new EPA for you. When we started this whole journey way back in November, we started the journey of walking with Jesus in the liturgy. We heard the predictions of his coming through the Old Testament during Advent. We celebrated his birth during Christmas. And then after Christmas, we celebrated his manifestation to the non-Jewish world through Epiphany. Then we celebrated his baptism in the Jordan. Then he started his preaching. That's what we call ordinary time, when we wear green, where we experience the teachings of Jesus, his miracles, his parables, okay? And then on Ash Wednesday, we began walking with him to Jerusalem, where the major events of his life occurred, where he suffered, he died, and he rose again. And then for the last 40 days, we've been walking around the earth with him again as he teaches the apostles, trying to get their attention. And last Thursday, he ascended, which was a holy day, by the way. He ascended into heaven. And he said on that day, "Go now and teach all nations what I've taught you." And the disciples immediately ran from there to the upper room and prayed because they didn't know what the heck to do. Then the Holy Spirit came on Pentecost. And as they're huddled in prayer without courage and without gifts and without talents, the Holy Spirit comes upon them and transforms them. And these doofuses changed the history of the world. Now, that's fact. That's history. Now, the spiritual fact is that the same process happens in our lives. We get to walk with Jesus and hear Jesus speak the parables, speak the miracles. We hear Jesus all year long, but if we're not engaged, if we're not attentive, if we're not listening, like some of you aren't even now, then the Holy Spirit can't possibly penetrate our spirits, because it is crowded out by all the other stuff that's going on in our lives. We're not ready to commit. We're not ready to change. We're not ready to be transformed. The Holy Spirit is a real thing. It does change people's lives, and it can change ours too. Now, the good thing about this is that God understood that we too are doofuses. He understood that we too don't pay attention, that we too have a disconnect between what we say we believe and what we do. And so you get a second chance. Every year we celebrate Pentecost. So if you missed the journey this year, if you missed walking with Jesus this year, you get another chance. Ordinary time begins tomorrow, Monday. And we get to hear the preaching of Jesus again. Now, EPA. What does EPA mean? For our purposes, it means this. You must experience Jesus. So you walk through ordinary time with the church. You hear the preaching and the parables. You walk with Jesus as he goes around the Sea of Galilee. And he puts out his message. P, you ponder. You take what he teaches and you think about it. You actually take the scriptures and you think about them. You pray over them.